Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrives at episode 558, Creag Tuire. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How's everybody doing this week?
Not too bad.
Anybody watch or read anything while we were gone?
I did a double feature.
What'd you do?
How was your double feature?
It was pretty all right. We went and saw Haunted Mansion, which is a pretty cool little movie. It's not overly great, but it was fun and cute. And I thought it managed to kind of toe that line between, being a legit pseudo scary haunted house movie and still being family friendly. With some great performances and a couple of laughs. And if you compare this to the Eddie Murphy, oh man, it's great. But just as a film in and of itself, it wasn't bad. And then saw the Meg 2, the Meganing, or whatever it's called. And I really enjoyed the first movie simply because it doesn't pretend to be anything other than, hey, here's a Jaws homage with a giant shark, and it's dumb, and I kind of love it for that. This one really, it felt like it was a little darker. It was almost taking itself too seriously, and it was just like, why is there plot? I didn't come for plot. I came for giant sharks eating people. And then the last third of the movie, they get to some place called Fun Island, and the giant shark eats people. And so I was happy again. In fact, there's an absolutely amazing shot where it's like they put the camera inside the shark's mouth looking out. So the entire movie theater screen just opens up in its row of teeth, and he swallows like 50 people, and then it comes down, and then it comes back up again and swallows another 50. And the people are still inside the mouth screaming and carrying on the water surface. Anyways, more of this, please. That's what I came here for. Oh, now Jason Statham has a harpoon with an explosive on it, and he's riding a jet ski jousting the shark. Oh, yeah. So it's that level. But not as much fun as the first one, but still pretty fun.
Keith, what about you? Did you do anything?
I finished season 2 of the U.S. version of Ghosts, which I have been thoroughly enjoying. Not as much as the UK version. The UK version is on pound for pound funnier. But there's also a lot less of it. But they do some interesting and cool stuff with the US version and find new ways to keep it fresh, considering there is 3 or 4 times the amount of episodes per season that the UK version has. Right. So I really enjoyed that. And then I started finally. I'm only 2 episodes in, but I've started watching Arrested Development. Because I'd never seen that before.
Well, you'll have to let me know what you think.
So far, I'm enjoying it. I think it's good. I like it. I've been listening to Smartless and have been enjoying Jason Bateman and Will Arnett a lot. I was like, they've been talking about that on the show too. It's like, all right, I need to finally sit down and watch it. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. 2 episodes in, but
it's one of my all-time favorite sitcoms.
I've heard so many people rave and love it, and I didn't know the Russo brothers kind of started there too. Yep. So then when they had them on the podcast, so that was like finally the tipping point of I'm gonna finally sit down and watch this.
Now you'll see all the little Easter eggs in the Marvel films they did.
Yeah,
because there's some Arrested Development Easter eggs in the films.
And I had no idea Ron Howard was the narrator.
Yeah. Well, and it's produced by him and.
Yeah, I saw that in the credits.
What's his longtime producer friend?
Grazer,
yeah, Brian Grazer. Season 4, which is the one they did for Netflix, is
the first season they did for Netflix, right? Because they did 2,
right? And no, I think did they do 2 seasons on Netflix?
Because there's a season 5 on Netflix.
Okay, so it must be season 5 because I think there's only one.
No, there were only 3 on Fox. They had to
okay,
have
so
done
there
2
must
for
have been
Netflix
2. Well, the
then.
Netflix ones aren't as good as the first 3 seasons when they were on Fox, but why did I
Largely
think there was
because
only one?
the way they were shot, the cast,
Yeah.
obviously it was that we had to try and get the band back together because it was well after the show had
And
ended.
they had so
Right.
many other commitments happening.
And yeah, everybody was busy.
Mhm.
So
In fact,
they've split the stories up.
there's a
where-
lot of points where you can see on the ones that they tried to make it look like there was interaction, you can tell the one person that didn't happen to be there at the time because it'll be shot differently. It's weird. It's noticeable who was there for shooting and who shot their scenes later. So and I think
and
there's
that's
only
the big problem
yeah.
is that show works best when
Right.
the cast is together ripping on each other
Right.
versus, off doing their own thing. I feel bad that I never actually finished season 4. But I did finally go back and, we got through 1, 2, and 3, and I really enjoyed it. Mel a little bit less so, because I think there were just a lot of references that went over her head. But
yeah. There's just a lot of little things, like in the end of season episode 2, and he looks over to the job and says, "You mailed that check," and he just slowly backs up on the Segway. Stuff like that just makes me laugh.
Did you call him Job?
Job.
Gob.
Gob. Or how
Gob.
it's
Yeah.
spelled.
It is spelled Gob.
Yeah. But you would never know it unless
No.
you had the subtitles on. At least not at this
Exactly.
point in the show.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else?
That's all I did. What about you, Glenn?
I think the only thing I really did was we watched the first 2 episodes of Only Murders in the Building tonight. We really, really enjoyed the first 2. I'm looking to be another banger season. And then I didn't really watch anything else. I watched Young Guns again. Of course, I've seen that dozens and dozens of times because it's one of my favorite films. But other than that, I didn't really do anything
Did
else.
you guys finish Good Omens?
I have not. Holly and I have been trying to watch that together, and I think we're 3 episodes in, and we just haven't had a chance to do it. And Robin was watching Only Murders, which is why we watched that tonight, because she happened to be here. So otherwise, we probably would have watched Good Omens. But
we are 2 episodes in, so.
yeah, we're 3, I think, in.
We're only 1 in.
But oh my God, it's been so good.
Yeah, I like this season almost better than the first season, and the first season was based on one of my favorite books. So
Anybody
Probably the
watching
freshness
that
of it.
1982 Greatest Geek Year Ever documentary?
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Off mic.
I did watch episode 2 of that this week.
I got to it as well, and the revelation that John Carpenter's The Thing, Blade Runner, and Megaforce all came out on the same day.
Jeez.
and
And
all
2 of them
flopped.
are now regarded classics.
Yeah, I say all of them flopped that, and 2 of them are classics now.
Megaforce will never get the recognition it deserves.
Yeah, it was a good episode.
I watched that stupid thing every single time it was on HBO as a kid.
I think I only saw it once or twice.
It's bad, but man, 12-year-old me was happy. How about Strange New Worlds? Anybody current on that one?
I don't watch any Star Trek, any new Star Trek yet.
You guys are killing me. We just did the musical episode, and it was so good. Okay. This is your weekly plug to watch Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, I just, the more Star Trek comes out, the more I fall behind, the more I don't want to watch because I feel like I got a lot of catching up to do. So it'll be one of those things that goes on a list of one day I'll catch up with everything.
They're short seasons, and they're all good. If they don't win all of the Emmys this year in writing, something's up.
If there weren't other things that I liked better, I like Star Trek, don't get me wrong. I like Star Trek a lot. But if there wasn't other things that I liked better that would get in the way, I probably would be caught up on Star Trek. But
Well, I get it. When your friends are all going, well, let's watch season 3 of The Witcher, and you're kind of over it going, do we really have to watch season 3 of The Witcher? I'd much rather be watching I don't know, maybe we could start Yellowstone or, 15 of these other shows that my friends have recommended to me. But you guys have voted on The Witcher, huh? Okay. And I feel very Jeff Goldblum because I want to ask Netflix. Now, eventually you plan on having some Witcher in your Witcher show, yes? Because I know all about the war in the north and the elves and the this, that, and the other. And it's like, when is Henry Cavill going to show up and kill some monsters? That's why I tune into this.
Pretty soon, not much longer.
Yeah,
not much longer.
Right.
Did you hear the campaign they had to do in England? Netflix spent I don't know how many millions of dollars on billboards all across the UK that simply say, yes, he's still the Witcher in season 3. Because apparently they released it and the numbers were so bad that everybody was like, oh, well, you got rid of Henry Cavill. And they're like, well, no, not yet. It's like, way to throw the other guy under the bus, Netflix.
They all say, who is Doctor Who?
This is Tim Trelaw.
This is David J. Howe.
I'm Peter Purvis.
I am Sadie Miller.
This is Lauren Cornelius.
Larry, it's Fraser.
For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world and beyond, the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I'm Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting for 42 years. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex on the Direction Point Podcast Network.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations and publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, well, I did do sort of one other thing this week. Sort of. So I got it actually. Well, last month I got my copy of the collection season 9, but over here it's John Pertwee season 4. No, 3. 3. And had every intention of reviewing it, and so I sat down, and what I've been trying to do is make this is my something new 2-minute review, by the way. So here we go. I sat down and genuinely wanted to give this, a good once over and look at. But I don't want to do a review of stuff that's, already been available before on previous media. And so I delved in and I started watching A Behind the Sofa. And I got most of the way through it and realized, well, yeah, this is something new on here, but this is really kind of the same stuff that I talked about on the William Hartnell release that I reviewed that is pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's Doctor Who actors sitting around and making comments about the episodes as they watch them, and which is all fun and great. I love the behind the sofa things. I could sit and watch those all day. So they're still there and they're still a lot of fun. And so I decided, okay, well, I need to go out on a quest to find something on here that is new. And so I started looking through stuff, and I knew darn well that these weren't new, but there is, they had footage from, I think it was Panopticon, which is a convention in the 1990s, and it had Ingrid Pitt and Terrence Dicks. And I started watching it knowing full well that this is probably available somewhere else. But I got sucked into it and started watching it, and then I ran out of time to do anything else on that day. So I was like, all right, forget it. I'll put it aside, come back to it. And so I came back to it, and I sat down and I said, oh, I know, this has a Making of the Time Monster, which is new. And so I'll watch that. And I think it's called Time in Atlantis. And so I sat down and I popped the disc in. And flipping through Time Monster, not finding it. Oh, where is this thing? And so I was like, well, Time Monster, that was the one about Atlantis, right? So to refresh my memory, I started watching the Time Monster. And 4.5 hours later, I had watched all of the Time Monster and ran out of time again. And then realized that the Time Monster documentary is actually on the 8th disc, which is the special features disc for the Time Monster, which has everything else on there. So I had totally intended to go and watch Time in Atlantis, which I'm sure is a very, very good making of documentary, but I also ran out of time and decided, you know what? It's a great box set. Everything on there looks great. The video looks wonderful. Time Monster looks great in quasi high def. You know, it's up converted, obviously. Still a great story. Loved it. A lot of fun. You know, it's got its problems, but I'm not going to re-review that because we've always talked about it. But the collection, Doctor Who, John Pertwee season 3 is a pretty good box set for what I've seen so far. And that's my something new 2-minute review.
So your something new 2-minute review
was everything old.
That you didn't do anything new.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So,
thanks for that report, Glenn.
The menus look great, but they're not any different than any of the other menus that we've already seen. So, any of the other box sets. So. Actually, that's not true because there is a variation on the TARDIS interior for each one. So, but they still look spectacular. I'll get around to watching the making of sometime.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram. Putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Travelling the Vortex.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, should we move on to news?
Yeah. So here's something not new either. Kind of new. A deluxe illustrated edition of Rose is coming out on the anniversary, the 60th anniversary. So
of
the
Rose?
special, of the novel.
The novel.
The novelization.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
Rose has been out for 60 years?
The 60th anniversary.
No, on November 23rd, to coincide with the show's 60th anniversary.
Oh.
So they originally published in 2018. This deluxe edition of Rose features illustrations from acclaimed artist Robert Hack. I don't know if you guys remember a couple years ago, they did a deluxe version of a First Doctor story, too, that had illustrations. So this is kind of the same thing, but for Rose.
Oh, yeah. What was it? It was was it the Daleks? I think it might have been.
I think it was
Doctor Who and the Daleks. Yeah. Yes. And it had really kind of neat looking illustration. I think it was just last year, wasn't it? They did that, or was it 2 years ago? So So this is the Rose is getting that treatment. Okay.
Yes.
I think that makes it a little more special, especially since it's recognizing the not reboot, but the restart of the series as well. So it's getting some recognition for that as well on the anniversary. But I'm okay with that.
Really cool.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I haven't seen any of the pictures yet, but
they've only released the cover. I'm trying to post it in the chat thread.
Okay,
it's not wanting to go.
Oh, I see it. There it is. Oh yeah. No, that looks cool.
Ooh.
Yeah. I like the 60s effects in the background.
I'm running my mouse across it, trying to turn it like you can on Amazon, where you could spin the book around and see it, 360.
Turn.
Yeah, it's not turning. It's just like sliding around my screen.
How's that working for you, Glenn?
It's not.
It can be pre-ordered now. And Glenn, didn't you read the novelization?
I read the novelization of Rose, yes, back when it came out.
That's pretty snazzy looking.
It is snazzy looking. I'm always very, especially something that was, the Target novelization literally was just released, 5 years ago. So I'm a little, okay, you're republishing that. But I think when you have a little bit of a gimmick or something that gives it a fresh look like this with the illustrations, I think that's a good idea. I'm on board with that.
Well, especially when there doesn't seem to be quite as many things being released for purchase to celebrate the anniversary.
Yeah,
it seems like not as many, retrospective aspects of the show are kind of being explored. It seems like a lot of the releases that we're getting are just kind of stuff that's been on the docket that we're aware of anyways, and not, oh, look, I can go reminisce about the history of the show.
Well,
there was for the 50th.
That's what I was saying. Don't you remember the 50th? We had a lot of those retrospective media that was talking about 50 years. And I suppose because maybe 50 is more of an earmark year, but I still think, 10 years on, maybe that kind of stuff didn't sell though as well. And so maybe they're kind of soft selling some things now so that they maybe they ended up with a lot of stock of a lot of that stuff. And so they've kind of backed off of this anniversary, but it was kind of nice that everywhere you turned, it was, Doctor Who 50th anniversary related stuff. It's just not out there this year.
The illustrated edition of Doctor Who and the Daleks did come out last year in March.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I think I put it on my Christmas list last year, which neither of you got for me. So always this year.
Am I crazy for kind of hoping that once we get to, the anniversary and we're officially in the 60th year, that like maybe in, January, February, whenever the specials are getting ready to come out, that we'll get a new version of the Doctors Revisited, and that they'll compile a collection that includes 12, 13, and 14. Because I feel like,
what are you talking
that
about?
was a thing.
But that was all leading up to the 50th. It wasn't post 50th.
Well, but we can't do a box set with 3 Doctors until 14 airs.
I see what you're saying.
You know.
A box set. I thought you just meant airing new, like.
So we got 9. We got 9, 10, 11. Now we need 12, 13, 14. Is what you're saying,
right? Yeah, yeah.
I see. Well, yeah, they'll have to wait until next year to do that, so they can do the specials. Yeah. Put them on there, yeah. Or one of the.
I mean, unless they went back and covered, Cushing or something.
Yeah, right.
Or the War Doctor now.
Yeah, because they didn't. Although
that's true.
You really couldn't, because Day of the Doctor would have been the only episode you could put on there. The Cushing Doctor would be cool, but I think because I don't even remember who's the rights holder of that now, it's been passed around so much, they're very much latched onto that, not doing much with it. So as far as crossovers go. In fact, that was part of the reason why it couldn't be used in the 50th as a Easter egg.
I wish they'd play nice the way Warner and MGM play nice with Never Say Never Again.
Right.
It's like just let them use it, and we'll acknowledge that it was a thing.
I think it's cute that you still call it MGM.
Bond lives at MGM.
No, Bond lives at Sony now. MGM died a slow, painful death.
Yes, it did. And when the new Bond film comes out and does not have the MGM logo on it, then maybe my brain will disassociate them. Until that happens, Bond lives at MGM.
All right. Give you that.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson, Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse, on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Well, should we move on to a review?
Yes. The second Doctor Adventures, James Robert McCrimmon.
From Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, The Second Doctor Adventures. James Robert McCrimmon.
Creag on tour! Be silent for James Robert McCrimmon, Laird of McCrimmon.
We have to get back to the TARDIS.
Aye. Right.
When I say run, run.
I don't know any doctors.
Well done, Jamie. We made it.
We did? Aye, we did.
What's your business here?
Hello,
Headmaster. New recruits.
This is the Doctor and Jamie.
Why'd you do it, Doctor?
Do what?
This chaos is why you left Gallifrey? Why you value freedom to protect primitives like these?
My dear Raven, this isn't chaos.
Patience. We sincerely hope you've had another wonderful, restful day here at the Grove.
Jamie! You know the evil I have fought out there in the universe. More than you'll ever encounter in your cloistered Time Lord life. Oh, they got me.
Orbital scanners calibrated to detect temporal energy signature.
Am I being processed? I'm not a cheese triangle, you know.
This whole system will have to be placed in a time loop, effectively removed from existence.
A fresh-faced Jacobite piper in the aftermath of Culloden.
No!
Who stepped aboard the TARDIS without a second's hesitation. Stay calm, Jamie, stay calm. Woo!
How long have I been here?
You don't remember?
I don't remember much about anything. In some ways, seeing all this, the console, the wee circles on the wall, it feels like no time has passed at all. But in others,
it's been a lifetime.
Aye.
Doctor, I'm as stealthy as a wee fox. Do you honestly think I'd just wander into people and...
I thought you might say that. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
Jamie. Mysterious dreams of lives never lived haunt an alien prisoner in Edinburgh Castle in the year 1776. Meanwhile, the Doctor arrives on another reluctant mission for the Time Lords, with the enigmatic Raven observing his every move. How was the Doctor's erstwhile traveling companion, Jamie McCrimmon, connected with the terrifying deaths that plague the streets in the shadow of the castle? And will Jamie ever really know his true self again?
Well, it wouldn't be much of a comeback if he didn't. I mean, spoilers, but... It's all right.
So, yeah, we're doing these one story at a time. So, because I think that this box set suffers from the same thing that the first box set did. And I think they get very ambitious with the first story. And they get very high-minded, and I don't even know what the descriptor of it would be. But it always feels very disjointed and confusing, and
the story specifically.
Yeah, the story. Yeah, and they did that with. I felt like the first one. For some reason, the setups for all these box sets, they feel like they have to do some sort of this weird timey-wimey. People not themselves, and you know, it just
some abstract concepts.
Abstract. Thank you. That was
Yeah.
that was what I was looking for. Abstract concepts, and they just feel like they have to do that. And I don't think they needed to necessarily do that. They could have kept the ideal of this entity that was drawing on Jamie's memories that he didn't realize he had, but are there, that because the Time Lords had botched up taking them away, or stripping them away from him. That the concept of that was good, but the execution was so weirdly non-linear that it just didn't work for me. And I kept getting, if you've confused me 10 minutes into your story, and I'm still confused 20 minutes into your story, and I'm still confused 30 minutes into your story, you've not structured your story very well. And that's what I didn't like about it. Eventually it gets across what's happening. And so a lot of what happens prior to the reveal makes sense, but you're in the dark as to what's really happening almost too long, so that when you reveal it, it's like, well, I didn't enjoy getting to this point. If you had held my hand a little better early on, maybe I would have enjoyed the ride better. So,
yeah, it's kind of a tough balance to make, because you need some of those flashbacks of Jamie and the Doctor in the Paradox Zungle of Zaitan, dealing with the hollow race, to understand kind of what the threat is once they reveal why Jamie's memory wipe was botched. I mean, it's because of these hollow rays, and then that unleashes it. And so once you get to the end of it, it kind of makes sense, but there's so much confusion leading up to that point that it's hard to follow what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then even still, once it kind of gets to where it's supposed to get to, it feels like the resolution is just a matter of, well, we just have to run back to the TARDIS and then we're safe.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like they really have thought through how to, solve the issue, other than, the Doctor reminds the Jamie of what happened while they traveled, and then that lets the Wraith lose its power and he disappears. It's kind of like, oh, that's really all it was. And there didn't seem to be enough, as much a threat as they kind of tried to establish early on. The dispatchal of the threat didn't seem as high as it should have been.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, you both have absolutely nailed it. In fact, I'll go one step further, that the multitude of confusion of Jamie's stories coming one on top of another right at the beginning made me outwardly groan, thinking, oh, it's going to be one of these. And then the resolution at the end, like, we've got to get back to the TARDIS, and then we do, and that fixes it. And I just kind of sat there dumbfounded for a minute going, wait, so you're telling me all these times that we have argued, dude, just get back in the TARDIS, would have worked? I mean, what craziness is this? Oh, there's a problem on Planet X, Doctor. Well, let's not go to Planet X. Okay. And that's the end. And it's like, that was your solution to the whole story. We're just going to get back in and leave. I mean, talk about unsatisfying. You know what would have been better? How about a whole story from older, grumpy, layered Jamie McCrimmon?
Mm.
I'd have been on board with that. Something weird is happening and he's got to figure it out. And then the stranger shows up claiming to be a friend that he doesn't recognize. Sure. Let's do it that way. Why do we need this? I don't know.
I think that the reason why they didn't necessarily go that route, and I think Keith and I are the only ones that read World Enders, right? With Sixth Doctor, Frobisher, and Jamie. I think it was we had gone beyond homework that we were doing for our Frobisher.
I don't think I did get to that.
No, I think Keith and I read it. Keith, you read it, right? I think we talked a little bit about it. Where it's Jamie's much, much older, and he encounters the Sixth Doctor, and his memories come back, and then he ends up being cyber. Well, spoilers. He ends up being cyber converted at the end of it. But he does it, he sacrifices himself in the meantime for others and for the Doctor. But
that's how they're going to end his story.
Well, that's a much older. Well, yeah, that's a much older. Well, I think things have since happened that rewrite that history, but I think that was the idea. And I think the other thing that I struggle with is I think that Big Finish wanted us to imagine a much older, maybe the age that Fraser Hines is now, as when he's encountering the Third Doctor. I can't do that in my head canon. I can't make him that old, because in my head canon, the Two Doctors is going to happen after this. And so for me, I'm picturing Jamie, who is markedly older in that story as well. I mean, that's almost 10, 20 years later that story takes place. So Jamie's can be older, and he can be older in this story, and it still works. But I don't imagine a very much older, and I don't think that's where you were going with it, Sean. I think you were saying, had they used a much older Jamie, it might have, it would have been better. But I think they want us to think that anyway, that he's much older, and I can't place him in my head canon that way, because he's...
Well, and part of that is because Fraser just, even having met the man, Fraser sounds eternally youthful.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I don't know, he's 70 or something now, but he still does not sound all that much different than he did on the show.
Either in one of those interviews or an interview I saw with him somewhere else, he talked about how much of a relief it was to be able to play an older version of Jamie, because he didn't have to put on the, more high-pitched, hyper character that he portrays when he's portraying a younger Jamie. But I never heard it. I don't think he skipped a beat in this one. It still felt like a young, energetic Jamie. And I agree. He's like this. He has this eternally young persona about himself, even when you talk to him in person. I agree.
Yeah. He is Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not a fan of the structure or execution on this one.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. Do we lose Keith?
I suspect we may have lost Keith.
I'm back now.
He's back.
Oh, there he is.
I couldn't tell because I still had my picture open from Rose.
Sorry, Keith. We are done talking about this one.
Oh, I was just... my 2 cents on the age part of it is it feels like Fraser also plays it inconsistently, because in this one, the Jamie we have that's afflicted seems so much older, and then the next one, he does feel like he's the Two Doctors version.
Mm-hmm. So I think I sort of attributed to that to he's also...
because of the affliction?
Yeah, he's ailing. I mean, he's not healthy. Obviously, being taken over by this parasitic being... I think that has maybe drawn a lot of his energy. So I think that I could kind of, yes, he does play it like he is older, but I think that I can attribute to the fact that he's also very worn. Let's just say it's been 20 years. I mean, even after 20 years, right. He's not a young man anymore, and it is going to take a toll on him, especially when it's something like this, that's the affliction. So I think that, the inconsistency can be explained away by that, because the next two stories, he's very much the young, youthful, spry Jamie that he's played in the past.
That's true.
Well,
right,
let's
so
move on to the next one.
Man?
Sure.
Yeah, let's move on to the Green Man.
Perched hundreds of miles above the forest canopy of Florestus Prime, the Grove Rehabilitation Center promises to help the staggeringly rich of the galaxy cheat death. When a reunited Doctor and Jamie are dispatched by Raven to investigate the disappearance of a Time Lord, they are greeted by the Chief of Medicine, Overseer Fuller. Watching from his room at the Grove, an incapacitated Doctor helplessly observes the facility from afar. Who is the lone patient waving from across the courtyard? Why is Overseer Fuller doing rounds late at night when the Grove appears to have no other patients? And what precisely does Raven know about the Green Man?
Parts of this
more
were cool.
crickets.
I expected a bit more of a dun 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 from Sean.
Well, that part would have gotten one. So, all right, I'm going to launch into this.
Sure.
So the first half of this is Rear Window.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Incapacitated doctor, can't move. He's in a wheelchair, looking at things through binoculars from the balcony. Okay, and there's a murder. Okay, I can get behind that. I don't mind. It's not like Doctor Who has never riffed on a classic film before. I can get behind that. But it's so boring. There's absolutely no tension. There's just, Jamie, go and explore. Jamie, come back. Jamie, hold my hand. Jamie, and it's great to have the two of them together.
And it's necessary setup for the reveal.
And it is necessary setup for the reveal. But so much of the two of them together was not fun camaraderie, Doctor and Jamie.
Yeah.
It was just Doctor and Jamie were in a room. Hey, did you pack a picnic lunch? Yes, I did. Would you like a sandwich? Well, yes, I think I will. Hey, pass me the orange juice. Okay, here you go. I mean, it was just business.
Sean, it's so boring that the second Doctor kept falling asleep through it.
I rest my case. Thank you for making my point much more succinctly than I did. And then, so we see Fuller down there, and the green man across the way, and now all of a sudden there's this new plant down here. He must have buried a body there. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's quite the leap. just to automatically assume there must be a body. I mean, I would almost find it more plausible that they turned the person into a plant.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds way more. You're on a planet full of plants. Okay, sure. Why do the people keep disappearing? Why do we keep seeing plants? I don't know. Maybe those are connected, but no, there must be a murdered dead body buried in a shallow grave in the courtyard that we can't see from here. Go investigate, Jamie. Okay. And there's this business with the security cameras. What was up with that?
Well,
I don't see how he was supposed to be able to do that in 30 seconds. Or
right. 30-second thing.
Right.
Yeah, go dig a hole with a trowel in 30 seconds. Cue the Mission Impossible music. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, okay.
I think it's supposed to add the tension, but it's just unbelievable.
I've
been digging holes lately, and you can't do that in 30 seconds.
There's a lot of this that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of it or is unnecessary.
The whole first half of this I was going, this box set is so not off to a good start, and it's continuing to not be up to a good start in the second part. And then the reveal, dun, 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 it's a crinoid. Oh, now you have my attention. I'm suddenly reinvested. Bring it on. And unfortunately, again, the execution kind of just wasn't there because it just fizzles out, and there's no real looming threat. It doesn't feel like, and sending Jamie to his death in a stairwell in a basement was like, okay, we know there's something going on
because it's
here.
the middle story of a box set that's named James Robert McCrimmon. We know he's not going to die.
Never really bought that. And, just listening helplessly. It would have been more impactful had the Doctor not sent him there.
I'll tell you,
just stay where you're at. Okay.
The Doctor can put on a pretty good...
No, I've changed my mind.
I've changed my mind.
I've changed my mind.
I've changed my mind again. Get back here.
The Doctor is a pretty decent actor, though, because I would have been convinced had I been that other guy that he was really concerned and realized that Jamie was in peril. But yeah,
and then faking his climb across the room,
right,
and okay, that was cool. But then, what's the motivation? What are we doing with the monster? Let's get to he's just a crazy person. That's all. He might as well be a mustache. Yeah, he must be a mustache twirling. Nothing can stop me now. Really? That's where we're at? There's no grand plan. There's no, I'm going to rule the universe. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to,
well,
more work.
Part of it was he was being influenced by the crinoid. I mean, I can kind of chalk it up to that.
But the Crinoid didn't want to take over everything?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the problem, is the Crinoid should have had more ambition and desire. Here's my other thing with this, and I got really confused. What did Jamie cut open and crawl inside? Was it the Crinoid?
The Crinoid?
The
He
Crinoid.
was inside the Crinoid.
So the Crinoid can absorb people, but you can just as easily cut into the Crinoid and slip inside of it and be undetected?
Apparently, it cannot absorb you from inside.
Yeah, they did say that, but that seemed ridiculous.
Apparently.
That seemed ridiculous.
It's a bit ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. I liked the fact that the Doctor was on to him the whole time and had concocted this way to communicate with Jamie, so that the guy, Fuller, didn't know when they were communicating with each other. And that reveal's kind of nice, because you look back and go, okay, well, no wonder this was so boring, because they were actually
all the real stuff was happening.
Yeah, exactly. All the real stuff that was happening we couldn't know about. But then when they reveal it, it's almost a little convoluted. And when they do it, it's almost comical when the Doctor reveals how he's making contact with Jamie to communicate with him telepathy, when he goes into these fits of, the pain. He gets kind of silly, and it's almost vaudevillian the way he acts with reacting to the pain. And so that just kind of took me out of it, made me giggle a little bit too. Knowing that
that's kind of the second Doctor, though.
Well, that's just it. But knowing that I thought he was supposed to be serious, but then thinking, well, that's how the second Doctor would fake being hurt. So I guess I can accept it, but it's still a little silly.
It makes it a little hard when he's supposed to be I guess they do reveal that he had been cured of the poison long ago or whatever.
Well, I think he said the day before, the night before, or something like that.
Yeah. But
which means there's no reason for him to have fallen asleep quite so
okay, so that
regularly.
I'm glad you said that. That was my other thing. I made that joke about that. But why was he frequently falling asleep? Was it also part of the act?
I think it was.
Okay.
I think it was supposed to be. Yeah.
Because they never really explained that. I think they just inferred it. So I wasn't sure if that was really what they were trying to get at.
Because, I'm pretty sure I read that in my Writing 101 class, that in order to drum up some excitement, your main lead character should fall asleep frequently. Well, that makes for riveting writing.
What seemed weird about that too is it has been since the second Doctor that they've sort of implied this or given the impression that Time Lords don't need a lot of sleep, that they sleep very, very infrequently. So to have him continually nodding off, I thought was also a little out of character. Even if you're recovering from a poison or a toxin, I still don't think that you were going to, as a Time Lord, fall asleep that often. But I suppose
unless it's a regeneration episode,
right, and then you fall asleep for a long time.
Then you're in a coma,
right? or the third Doctor episode where he has to recover. Was it Mind of Evil, when he has the traumatic episode with the fire, when the mechanism makes him recall, and then he's like out for half the rest of that episode laying there recovering.
I guess
on holiday
might have been.
that's the thing. I can kind of justify the sleeping is he was actually infected, and if he was recovered from the poison the night before, well, that's why he was sleeping so much up to that point.
Yeah. That's true.
That was himself repairing himself.
Because most of that was early on, and that does kind of explain maybe that's how he's healing himself, is in those sleeping episodes.
Right, because after, they find the Crinoid pod, he doesn't really take a nap again.
Yeah, you're right. That's true.
The other complaint I have about this set, in particular these first two stories, is Raven.
Yes.
So I've had a problem with how her voice, not her voice, but the way that her voice has been recorded throughout this whole thing. It sounds like whoever has audio mixed it she never sounds like she is in the same environment as everyone else.
And she may not
do you guys
be.
have that?
Well, she may not be. And Michael Troughton is also recording his stuff from home. They
Michael
haven't.
Troughton sounds like he's in the same room as
Well,
Jamie.
in
the editing of it.
I'm
you know
going
what I'm
to
saying?
disagree with you because I think Troughton sounds like he's in recording in a closet. I've felt that way for both of these box sets. Is that I think his audio is a bit muffled, but on the flip side, hers is a bit.
Hers is too clean.
I don't even know that it's too clean. It's almost like there's a hint of a reverb at the end of it. And that's what makes it sound like it's at a different location for me as well. So she might be recording from offsite as well. They did say that Fraser was in studio, and I think a few of the other actors were in the studio. And I thought they said the actress that's playing Raven was there as well, but I may have been mistaken.
Well, and some of it does come down to her performance, where she is just, always smooth. And the way she talks is just always conspiratorial and all up on the microphone the whole time.
That very much is the problem. Is I think it's not only the way she's written in this box set compared to the first box set, but the way she's being performed by the actress in this box set.
Mm-hmm.
The first Raven felt competent. She felt aloof and kind of genuinely impressed with the Doctor from time to time throughout their adventure. You knew that she was dangerous by the time we got to the end with the reveal, but you didn't necessarily know why. This Raven is so syrupy.
She's laying it on thicker.
Yeah. She's almost just trying to be evil for the sake of being evil. Oh, you have to go and find this Time Lord who's disappeared. Oh, gee, I wonder if the Time Lord that's disappeared is going to wind up being the Doctor. Why are you trying to kill him, lady? And then when they have the face-off at the end and the Doctor threatens him or her, that's one more example where Michael Troughton has grown on me so much over these two box sets with his portrayal of his father, to the point where even with the dumb humor, I bought it.
I agree.
Because
I agree.
I could totally visualize Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines doing this bit, on TV.
Yeah.
I could totally see it in my mind's eye. But when he threatened her, and got to that moment, I still wanted to hear that lower voice drop. I wanted him to go down and be the stern second Doctor, because he has moments of legit, don't tempt me, and it's kind of there. And this is still a little too light and lilting, and it didn't have the same impact. But she still then turns around and responds with this, oh, but I'll do this. And it's just like, I don't know.
It's
like the
writers,
like a different character almost.
Well, it's like the writers want to make it feel like she's in charge, but for some reason she's not coming across as sinister as she was in the first one. And it's almost like she's chewing the scenery a little too much, and so now suddenly I'm not taking her serious. And maybe that's why
she was far more sinister in the first box set when we thought she was in charge, and now that it's kind of been revealed that she's pulling the strings on somebody else's behalf, that it's really cut her off at the knees.
Yeah.
But I agree with you about Michael Troughton, his performance, especially in this box set. In the first one, I could hear that it wasn't Patrick Troughton throughout the whole time, or most of the time. This one I can hardly tell when it's not Patrick Troughton. He's doing such a good job, and he has made it his own, but he is still channeling his father so much that it's almost indistinguishable.
Yeah, well, I don't think he does him as well as Fraser did, but it's a performance that I still buy.
You know what's interesting, and I think when we listen to Helicon Prime, maybe we'll hear this like I did, but I went back and listened to Fraser doing the second Doctor, and I don't think it's as spot on as I thought it was. And
Really?
the reason I say that is because Michael Troughton does. If you could take the two and meld them together, you'd have the perfect Patrick Troughton. Because I think Fraser does it just a little too low key, and as far as tone, and I think that Michael does it a little too high key, and so I think if you could meet in the middle, you'd have Patrick Troughton dead on. And so I'll be curious to hear what you guys think, if maybe you agree when we listen to Helicron Prime. But I went back and listened to some of his stuff, and I thought, when you're not thinking about it, he does such a good Patrick Troughton. But then when you're thinking about it, it's not as good as I thought it was. I mean, it's still great. Don't get me wrong. He still sells it. He sells it as much as Michael does, but it's not quite there as much as I thought as it was.
Interesting.
Well, should we move on to the Shroud?
Yes. Arriving on the planet Nineveh, the Doctor and Jamie find a desperate human colony fighting the effects of a devastating superweapon, the Shroud. Nullifying all light, the Shroud has rendered the humans blind in the face of aggressive alien invaders dubbed Squids. And it's only a matter of time before the colony fails. The Doctor and Jamie are caught between helping the humans fight back against the Squids and investigating their latest mission for the Time Lords. But as they haven't been told what that mission is, the pair are in the dark in more ways than one.
Bum bum bum.
Yeah, I liked this one. This one was
good.
This one was surprising all the way through. Keith, you go first this time.
Yeah, I mean, this one I think surprising all the way through is a great description, because you land in it, you have that cold open kind of the family getting the car crash, which winds up being essential to the plot later down the road. And you're literally in the dark through most of this story, because you don't know what's going on with what the Shroud is, how it's working, and you just slowly learn, and then once you kind of think you have your foothold with this civilization and this school, essentially, you then discover, well, the Squids aren't actually evil and are there to try to help. And just the twists and turns just keep going. And even though I think it kind of gets convoluted near the end, overall the ride is solid enough and keeps you guessing enough that it makes it worth its while. And some really cool and very high concept ideas in this story.
Yeah. I think where I felt it was going to fall down was I figured out, I didn't necessarily figure out who Paul was necessarily, but I had a suspicion that he was more over what was going on here than we thought. Fortunately, they then kind of subvert that, because they change his impression of what's happening or what he's doing, and they kind of turn it on its head so that he's not really the bad guy. He's kind of the unintentional bad guy, but he's not really the bad guy here. And so I liked that they did that, because sometimes when you figure something out early on, then you're kind of disappointed when it's revealed that, oh, I was right all along. Because I kind of like to be surprised and in the dark and have those really neat, oh, I didn't even expect this guy. I love those moments. But when you figure it out early on, and then that's how it ends up coming out, it almost spoils it for yourself. But this one, they took and subverted that by changing the element of surprise about that as well. And so I think that worked. That's what made this work really well. Not to mention, all along, you're suspecting a lot of other people being involved in a lot of other things.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't see the Paul stuff coming, but I did see, the fact that the Squids weren't evil and were, I kind of suspected that there was some sort of miscommunication going on there. I just didn't know what it was going to be. So once, I wasn't too surprised by that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Did anybody else think this felt like a video game?
No,
see that,
but I can see it now. In fact, it would be a very good video game concept.
Like almost like a very familiar one. Like I was listening to this, and okay, we're at this base, and we've got this thing, and the squids are out there, and they're trying to get us.
Well,
and it's all dark.
Is it BioShock? I think
it
has some elements of BioShock.
Yeah, maybe that one. But I just had this unnerving feeling through the whole thing. It's like, I've played this. And if I haven't, then I would play it. So.
I think what I like best about this is it really feels like a return to form too. And I've always said that I don't want my Doctor Who to necessarily be formulaic, but I also want it to be familiar. And I think this is just enough familiar that it's a interesting story, but it feels very much in line with a second Doctor story. I knew it was going to be right up your alley, Sean, when I realized it was a Base Under Siege story.
Bing.
Like, well, this has got Sean written all over it. So
I do like Base Under Siege stories,
but it slightly inverts that concept.
It does. Yeah,
it does. It does. It takes some liberties on the when you get down to the bones, it's Base Under Siege, but the surface isn't appear that way, at least initially.
Well, and I think what they do really well is when it does feel like you do realize it's a Base Under Siege, it's still not exactly a Base Under Siege, but it has to take on that element by the time that they get to that point, because it has to be that way so they can kind of, make the turns and surprises that you get later. So I agree. Early on, not so much. There's the core of it. Later on, it really starts to feel like Base Under Siege. And then, well, technically it was, but it wasn't. They weren't as in dire, they weren't really the prisoners they thought they were, or the seeking refuge that they were. So
it kind of dips into Base Under Siege.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Well, what do we have coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up next on the schedule, we return to The Toy Maker as part of our 60th anniversary tie-in with Adversary Archive Part 2. We'll be doing 3 individual stories, 1 poem, 1 comic, and 1 audio. We've got Solitaire, which is Companion Chronicles 4.12. I swear the numbering conventions on these get weirder and weirder.
It's season 4, episode 12.
Season 4, episode 12. We get The Toy Maker, which is a poem from Now We Are 600, written by James Gross and illustrated by Russell T. Davies. And then we get Endgame, which is a comic that appeared in the pages of Doctor Who magazine, issues 244 through 247. So that'll be another look at what we suspect is going to be the villain of the 60th stuff.
Listeners, if you want to follow along on Endgame specifically, if you don't have it available to you for the Doctor Who magazine, or even the collection that I think was put together by Panini later on, if you search on YouTube, there is a motion comic that someone has put together, and I wish I could give the guy credit. Maybe I'll remember it next, or I'll remember to look it up next week. But if you search for it, it does cover the entire in-game story, and it is a lot of fun to watch because it's a motion comic, so it's just the comic panels put to motion, but it's really well done and very engaging. So if it's easily available to anybody that wants to happen to follow along on in-game.
Neato. Maybe we'll do that for extra credit. And then we, for more 60th anniversary tie-in, we get some more Doomsday, the novel, in our next episode, Doomsday Extraction Point, which would cover hours 11 through 14, followed by number 15, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, which is the next segment of the Lost in Time mobile game. So you guys will have to be reporting on that.
We assume
since
it's going to be
Sean
dropping
doesn't
at that time.
We assume it's going to be dropping for that time.
They haven't announced official dates on that, right?
We're still, right. That is still to be determined. But I think because the first one was on the heels of the 2-part Titan comic, I really kind of feel like this will be on the heels of Extraction Point. Maybe not as quick, not the weekend after, but maybe not this weekend. But I have a feeling it'll be at least the next event, big weekend.
Definitely not this weekend.
That's true because we've already started this one, haven't we?
Yep.
And then some more 60th anniversary tie-in stuff with Once and Future, Two's Company. This will be the 4th installment of that saga from Big Finish. And 4 from Doomsday, which I love the title. I think it's great, which is a BBC audio adventure covering hours 16 through 19. So that's what's coming up on the schedule. And, of course, subject to change.
Right. Also do want to point out that we will be taking a 2-week break between our next show and the week after that. It gives us a little time to read the novelization, and also we've decided this year that we're going to put a 2-week break every once in a while, about every quarter. So this will be this quarter's 2-week break, just to give us a little time off, since we've been churning these out nearly weekly for you. So. All right, well, and of course, you can continue to follow along on travelingwithvortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, consider putting some value back into it. You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link and support us there. Members do get special audios. Sean just put up another Star Trek, this one having to do with the next-gen films. The next bit of audio that will go up will be another comic review from me. In fact, I think that goes up tonight. And then Sean has another Star Trek for it'll be Star Trek 103. While he goes back and I believe you revisited a couple of films, and then you managed to get the last Kelvin film in that you didn't get reviewed on the last. I suppose I say TOS, but it's technically not TOS, it's Kelvin, but there's some TOS in this as well. So
yeah, I recovered the motion picture, but the new 40th anniversary release,
right?
Because it really is a completely different movie than what had come before. Kind of briefly recap the first Kelvin, got much more in depth.
Yeah, I was going to say you really kind of
Darkness.
went back and tore apart Into Darkness again.
It gives me no pleasure to do so. And I
believe that.
I did go back and listen. I was very favorable to Into Darkness despite its problems on the first go around.
You did,
so
yeah. You were.
I must have been riding high on that theater experience because, woof. But then
you were much more
made
friendly
up
on the
for
first time around.
Made up for it with how much I love Star Trek Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So check those out, and then I think Keith is hosting our next trivia quiz. So that'll be up coming up later in the month or early next month as well. Also, please.
And as I tell people, I'm sorry.
No,
as I tell people in the short trips, if you guys are tired of the Star Trek ones, I kind of jokingly say by popular demand, because we have had people ask when's the next one coming. But if you're tired of it and don't want me to do Star Trek anymore, or want me to do something else, by all means, write in and let us know. Hey, how about doing this? But I will happily talk Star Trek till the cows come home. So if you let me, I'll continue to blather on about it.
Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to this podcast. It helps bump us up in ratings and recommendations. Make sure you join in our conversation on our listeners forum on Facebook. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on the platform formerly known as Twitter. We are at Travel Vortex on there so far. And then be sure to check out Sean's Flicks with Friends. He has another love, and that's his movie reviews. So be sure to check that out. He's over on TikTok as well. And then what's the address for Flicks with Friends?
Website is flickswfriends.com.
Yes. And then I've got a blog, trappedinthevortex.com. You can check that out as well, although I haven't put anything up recently, but I do have some plans. Anything else we want to plug? Keith, you got anything you want to plug?
I don't.
All right. Well, until next time.
Come see kids.
Yeah.
I got my work's got a new building coming up. You can watch the video online.
Well, there you go. All right, if that's going to do it for this one. Until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.